Hello, I'm Jim Paxson. Tonight we'll take you along on a harrowing rescue of thousands of young trout. Then we'll go north to Flagstaff for a day that's all about eagles. You'll also see a historic release of endangered black-footed ferret onto their new home on the range. All that and more coming up next on Arizona Wildlife Views.
Arizona Wildlife Views is brought to you by the sale of hunting and fishing licenses and the Heritage Fund, lottery dollars working for wildlife. Some projects made possible by the Sport Fish and Wildlife Restoration Fund.
Hi, and welcome to our show. In our first story tonight, we'll go behind the fire lines of a wildfire in Oak Creek Canyon that threatened more than 600,000 young trout, and you'll see the heroic efforts it took to rescue them.
On May 20th, 2014, a small fire that began near the Slide Rock Recreation Area of Oak Creek Canyon exploded, threatening homes, habitat, and the Arizona Game and Fish Department's Sterling Springs Fish Hatchery.
Currently have 600,000 fish on station, 50,000 brown trout, 80,000 Apache trout, and the rest are rainbow trout. They range anywhere from about 3.5 inches in length to an inch and a little over an inch. My youngest fish are about 6 weeks old.
With the fire creeping closer, the decision was made to try to rescue as many of the young fish as possible. This one hatchery raises 68% of all the trout stocked in Arizona.
I think it was Wednesday afternoon. Things were getting pretty bad close to here. We could see flames less than a quarter mile from the hatchery on Wednesday afternoon when we left. The helicopter was dropping water real close to the hatchery. It was looking a little scary on Wednesday.
In order to get back into the hatchery, the workers who normally spend their time raising baby trout found themselves donning fire protective gear and being escorted behind the fire lines.
It took a lot of coordination with liaison officers and with the incident management team, and we got in here this morning about 6 o'clock. We'll have all 600,000 fish out of here by this evening. It's real important because there's 80,000 Apache trout that are a threatened species. Those will go to Canyon Creek Fish Hatchery so that they can be raised to big enough to release this fall. The rest of the rainbows and brown trout will go to Page Springs and Bubbling Ponds so that they'll continue their growth prior to release this fall.
Besides the direct threat of the fire, it's what could happen afterwards that was the next big concern for these fish. With the wildfire burning away the native vegetation, there's nothing to stop ash and sediment from overrunning the hatchery once the monsoon rains begin.
There's a risk of runoff coming in and getting into the enclosed spring box and filling the spring with silt, sediment, ash. Trout won't survive if any of the above gets in there at high densities.
8 people worked as quickly as possible to load the 4 large, specially designed hatchery trucks. But the process requires very precise and labor-intensive work. 600,000 trout, one bucket load at a time.
We're loading up our Apache trout. They're 237 fish per pound. They're about 1.75 inches long. They're a lot more sensitive species of trout than the rainbow trout. We have to take a lot more care handling them. They succumb to stress a lot easier. They're extremely susceptible to bacterial cold water disease. Also, just loading them in the raceway, you got to be careful to slide your feet and not lift your feet because they hang out on the bottom a lot more than rainbow trout, so it's real easy to squish a few. You got to be real careful with them. They're a cool fish, beautiful fish.
While the hatchery folks are transferring the fish into their trucks, fire crews are making use of the steady supply of water that flows from Sterling Springs. They're running pumps and hoses to help put out hot spots that are still very close by.
That's a little Pacific Marine pump that can be carried by 2 men, and it's actually pumping water up canyon in hose lays, so that there'll be a nozzle, a firefighter will be mopping up, a guy will be stirring the dirt and the ashes, and they'll be finding hot spots and putting them out. And they can pump that about 1,000 vertical feet, so it's a real asset, and they're pumping right out of the water that comes out of the springs that feeds the fish hatchery. Last count was they had 36 crews. Those are 20-person crews. About half of them are hotshot crews. They're from as far away as Idaho and California all the way to Texas. So a lot of folks are here. When the fire bell rings, everybody comes running.
With fire crews working around them, the fish rescue continues. When a truck is filled with rainbow or brown trout, it heads to Page Springs Hatchery in Cornville, where it will unload and return to make another run. This goes on all day. Meanwhile, the Apache trout are all being transferred to Canyon Creek Hatchery on the Mogollon Rim.
And this load of fish I just brought 3 hours from Sterling Springs Fish Hatchery. These are Apache trout. We transported approximately 100,000 in this truck. And both of these tanks on this truck have been placed into the raceways here at Canyon Creek Fish Hatchery, where they will be raised until they are moved off station. This is my second load for the day. I took my first load of brown trout to the Page Springs facility earlier this morning.
The Apache trout were moved to this hatchery because it was the only one with enough raceway space left to hold them. Like any big emergency operation, there was some improvising to pull it off.
That's right, that's right. We're just making this up as we go and doing the best we can, and I'm sure we'll have a positive outcome, and we'll do our best to keep the numbers going into the bodies of water that we're responsible to keep stocked with these fish.
And that's the good news from this story. Once the rescue is completed, the hatchery managers developed a plan to ensure there will be no shortage of fish to stock this year.
All the hatcheries were able to come together and move some numbers around, and all of the fish that are produced at Sterling Springs Hatchery will be moved to Canyon Creek Hatchery and Tonto Creek Hatchery. So there's not going to be any loss in trout production for Arizona anglers.
While the Sterling Springs Hatchery will shut down for at least a year, possibly more, the young fish that were rescued seem to be adapting to their new locations.
You know, trout are doing pretty well. I've heard the Apache trout are doing really well at Canyon Creek Hatchery, and the rainbow trout here at Page Springs they're doing great. They're feeding well and putting on a lot of growth, and they're going to be ready for anglers here by the end of the fall, early winter.
Hopefully, every time an angler reels in a trout this year, they'll remember the people whose heroic efforts saved hundreds of thousands of these shiny, beautiful fish. It's a day dedicated to eagles. The annual Eagle event in Flagstaff, an opportunity for people to learn about, see, and maybe even be an eagle.
We've been doing it, over 15 years in Flagstaff. In the last 3, we've partnered with the Willow Bend Environmental Education Center.
Willow Bend was founded basically on the principle of trying to create a sense of stewardship. And so we want people to really know the place they live and feel connected with it. You know, that's why we teach about eagles, because they're here.
The event started early on a chilly February morning at the Game and Fish Regional Office in Flagstaff. About 30 people showed up for a chance to see bald eagles in the wild.
they're wildlife, so they may or may not be there, but we've got a couple of good scopes, so if we find something, we can take a real nice look at it. You see it, man?
Yeah.
The group was not disappointed.
Nice.
Oh boy, that is great.
It stopped twice along Lake Mary Road, and both times it spotted an eagle.
Okay, what kind are
Should I take a bow? Oh, man. We started out with one eagle perched up on the ridge way above us, and then we moved down the road a little piece and stumbled into a juvenile bald eagle, and it's been a wonderful morning.
Oh, he's just beautiful. I mean, you can see that head right from here. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. People are losing touch with the world they live in, and I just think it's really important to reintroduce them to that world.
Wow. Oh my God.
They're used to seeing everything on a TV screen or a computer monitor, and to actually see a live bird that behaves unpredictably, it reminds them that the world's not all under our control.
Does this look like a bald eagle? Well, it is. It is a bald eagle. It's just a very, very baby bald eagle.
Back at Willow Bend, a group of kids and their parents were having fun learning about bald eagles.
What's one more thing?
AmeriCorps volunteer Joe Zofrey was sharing some facts about eagle characteristics, behavior, and diet.
What do bald eagles eat? Fish, mostly fish.
Then he finally got to the one question that everyone was waiting for.
Who would like to volunteer to be a bald eagle? I can't tell if anyone's excited about being a bald eagle or not. All right, come on up. What are some things that we talked about that bald eagle has? Yes?
An amazing eyesight.
Amazing eyesight. Very good. Let's see here. This will work. All right. So why don't you go ahead and put these on. All right. There you go. Very good. Very good. So he's got that amazing eyesight. All right. So let's see. You got to have a really big wingspan here. So let's get this on you here, bud. There you go. All right. Go ahead and flap. Here's your beak. And then you know what? Let's make you an adult eagle too. Okay. So let's give you this nice white head here for a bald eagle. There you go. Very good. How about a hand for a new bald eagle here?
About the only thing more fun than dressing up like a bald eagle is standing so close to one that you can feel the wind whipped up by its powerful wings. The bird generating this breeze is a 13-year-old bald eagle named Aurora. She's blind in one eye. It was punctured in the nest when she was about 10 weeks old.
This is a young golden eagle. She'll just be turning 3.
The golden eagle's name is Anasazi. As a newborn, she was illegally removed from the wild and fed a calcium-deficient diet, which caused her bones to develop abnormally.
This is called a rouse. Shake it out, girl. Shake it out. Shake it out. That's it. That's a preening behavior, and that's a tail wag at the end. If they'll do preening behaviors while they're out, they're still very comfortable where they are, so that's a good indicator for me.
The bird's handlers are Joe and Jan Miller of Liberty Wildlife, a nonprofit wildlife rehabilitation center based in Scottsdale.
Since 1981, we've been able to rehabilitate and return to the skies of Arizona 87 bald eagles for a second chance at life in our state.
These birds weren't so lucky. Because of their injuries, neither eagle can safely return to the wild. So Liberty Wildlife uses them to educate the public about eagles and the challenges they face.
The main motivation is that hopefully through her exposure to the public, who get to see her today, is that they'll all go away caring more, that they'll all get involved with their wildlife and do things into the future that will help save these guys. So we'll always have bald eagles here in Arizona.
Bald eagles were nearing extinction when they were placed on the federal list of endangered species in 1978. They were taken off that list in 2007 after their populations rebounded following a variety of conservation efforts that included a ban on the insecticide DDT.
Just wanted to give you an idea of the extent that we go to and have gone to for bald eagles in the state.
Conserving bald eagles is something game and fish biologist Kyle McCarty talked about during his presentation. He said there are about 300 bald eagles that spend their winters in Arizona, and some raise their young here. There are 68 known breeding areas in the state. Bald eagles build their nests high on cliffs and in trees close to water where the fish they eat are plentiful. And when a breeding pair lays eggs, both mom and dad are responsible for keeping them warm.
The male and the female will take turns doing this. They'll be on there for 3, 4, 5 hours. They need to be sitting on those eggs all the time. You see this bird, it's a warm day, so it's panting, kind of like a dog. They get cooler by panting. They don't sweat like we do. So after that, the eggs will hatch. And the babies at first, they're pretty helpless. They're just little white balls of feather or down. From 6 weeks till fledging age, they will look like this. Just a big dark brown bird. And 10 to 12 weeks, they will leave the nest. This is a nestling at about that fledging age, getting ready to take its first flight. It's standing on the edge. It's pretty typical. They'll sometimes even walk out on a branch and they'll do some flapping, but thinking about taking his first flight.
Making sure they get the chance to take that first flight is critical. Bald eagles are no longer an endangered species, but they're still protected in Arizona by a variety of federal and state laws. Game and Fish and its government and private partners on the Southwest Bald Eagle Management Committee work hard to conserve bald eagles. That means making sure human activities don't scare eagles away from their eggs or otherwise interrupt the breeding process. So breeding areas are off limits to the public each year when eagles are raising their young. And a Nest Watch program continues to keep an eye on some of the more vulnerable nests.
Our Nest Watchers can intervene if folks are entering those areas where they shouldn't.
In addition, by placing identification bracelets on bald eagle nestlings, Game and Fish can more effectively monitor the status of Arizona's bald eagle population. And for now, the status is good, and the future is bright.
We've got an increasing population.
Thanks to years of vital conservation work and the people who pay for it by purchasing hunting and fishing licenses and equipment, bald eagles are more than just pictures in a book. There's something to see and experience in the wild.
Wow. Oh my God. Wow.
Do you know how Lee's Ferry became one of the top trout fisheries in the world? When the 15-mile tailwater portion of the Colorado River from Glen Canyon Dam to Lee's Ferry was created by the impoundment of Lake Powell in 1964, it created ideal conditions for trout. Arizona Game and Fish stocked rainbow trout and began managing this section of the river as a blue ribbon trout fishery. By the mid-1990s, the area's trout became a self-sustaining and naturally reproducing population. Anglers come from all over the world to experience Lee's Ferry, where the quality of the fishing is matched only by the quality of the scenery, as the swift-moving Colorado River winds its way through the lower segment of Glen Canyon on its way to the Grand Canyon.
This is a celebration of cooperation, of elbow to elbow, being together on the ground and making things happen. And all of these agency folks and the folks that have participated in this and that are here today, this is a special moment.
This special moment saw the recovery of the black-footed ferret take several steps forward as 25 of the endangered animals were released on SB Ranch in northern Arizona. The ferrets were welcomed onto this working cattle ranch because of a safe harbor agreement, a special provision of the Endangered Species Act that allows private landowners to conserve endangered species on their property with minimal impact to the use of their land.
You know, when you have folks like this with a conservation ethic they do, again, they're going to welcome having endangered species on their property, and they're going to be proud of that, and they should be. and they shouldn't get punished for it. And that's why we work so well with folks like this.
Well, I think it's exciting that there's a safe harbor agreement that allows private landowners to participate in these types of projects, because I think there are a lot of landowners who would like to, but you certainly don't want to feel restricted by any issues of liability or things that may happen that weren't your fault, or just all of the perception that may go along with having endangered species on your property. And the safe harbor agreement that that we're a part of today really releases you from basically all of those type of things. And that way, when we can feel good about our support, our participation, we can feel open and free to learn about it and see where it goes.
Successful ferret recovery also depends on a healthy prairie dog population, which is the ferret's primary prey. To help ensure that SB Ranch maintains a robust prairie dog population, a new vaccine field trial was also begun in conjunction with the ferret release.
For the past 10 years has been doing research to try and develop an oral vaccine that we can deliver to prairie dogs to protect them from sylvatic plague, as well as the black-footed ferrets that depend on those prairie dogs.
The vaccine will be delivered in the form of peanut butter flavored bait left on the doorstep of known prairie dog burrows.
We tried various different flavors, blueberry and so forth, but peanut butter was the biggest winner by far. But who doesn't like peanut butter, right?
Oh, it's very exciting to be testing in the field. Like I said, we have 10 to 12 years of research in the laboratory, developing the vaccine, making sure it was safe for lots of different species, all kinds of rodents, ferrets, even cattle. So we're very excited to now be testing it in the field in a natural setting.
The recovery of the black-footed ferret was one that almost didn't happen. By the 1970s, they were thought to be extinct, until a small population was discovered in Meeteetse, Wyoming in 1981. Biologists monitored the colony until a disease outbreak in 1985 wiped out all but 18 ferrets. At that point, the survivors were captured, and a breeding program began to try to save the species.
We're helping contribute to national recovery, so we have the Aubrey Valley population, and we're trying to establish a second site up here on the SB Ranch, and ultimately the goal will be to establish a third site.
The descendants of the original 18 ferrets have now been reintroduced into 21 recovery sites in the western United States, Canada, and Mexico. One of the first sites was Aubrey Valley near Seligman. Game and fish biologists, along with a group of volunteers, count the nocturnal ferrets twice a year, and the latest survey showed at least 100 adult ferrets at the Aubrey Valley site, which is now considered a self-sustaining population.
Because we don't have large tracts of prairie dogs, that many left anymore, they're going to smaller acreages of prairie dogs, and we need that private landowner support, which we have up here with Babbitt's.
So Babbitt ranches, their values definitely drive them towards conservation. So for us to participate in things like the release of black-footed ferret or sylvatic plague vaccine, tests on the prairie dogs or many other types of projects, those fit in perfectly with what our decision models are, what our values are, and that sense of responsibility and obligation to the land, so that when we're done at the end of the day, we feel very good about it.
Establishing this new recovery site was possible only because of the cooperation of many different groups coming together to benefit not only an endangered species, but to build relationships for future conservation.
We talk about partnerships and it almost becomes cliche. No question the black-footed ferret recovery is an epic conservation success story. But what it really is founded in are shared values between governmental agencies, federal and state, shared values with Native American nations, shared values with the family that's honored to be stewards of land that they've owned for many, many generations.
Well, that's our show for tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. For more information, visit our website at azgfd.gov. For all the fine folks at Arizona Game and Fish, I'm Jim Paxson, and we'll see you next time.